You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 6, Episode 11. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have Sam Blanco III, who is a COE chair board and the associate director for Trio programs at the University of California, Davis. Sam is on the podcast to share a little bit about his role with the Council for Opportunity in Education, how he came to work for Trio programs, and his educational and professional journey. So coming up in just a bit, Sam Blanco III. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Jaded Electronics, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, Cambridge Educational Services, CE Tours, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month goes a long way in supporting this podcast. If you own a business and would like to run an ad on our podcast, please send us a message for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. Any amount is truly appreciated. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, we have a great episode featuring Sam Blanco III, who is board chair of the Council for Opportunity in Education and serves as the associate director for Trio programs at the University of California, Davis. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Trio Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast is the Associate Director for Pre-College Trio Programs and College Opportunity Programs at the University of California, Davis. He serves as board chair for the Council for Opportunity in Education. He earned his bachelor's degree in economics from the University of California, Davis, and obtained his master's in educational administration from California State University, Sacramento. When he is not busy serving first-generation students, he enjoys fishing and watching old TV shows. I will ask him about that later. Welcome to the podcast, Sam Blanco III. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Juan. I really appreciate this invitation, and hopefully, people get to know me a little bit more. A lot of times, you meet people and it's always, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. But I think it's important to really sit down and get to know people because, sometimes life is short and you really appreciate where people come from.
Absolutely. So Sam, it is an honor to have you on here. You are associated with the Council for Opportunity in Education and you work for Trio programs as well. So you are very, very busy. We've been trying to get our schedules synced up, and we finally have been able to do it. But how are you doing? How's everything on your end?
It's been a very busy year for me, just personally and professionally, and um, I'm a mathematician at heart. So
All right.
I always believe, yeah, I always believe in balance and looking at things at both sides. So I'm doing okay right now. It's been a rough year, but I'm hanging in there.
Right on. How are things in California at the moment?
As a whole, we've actually been dealing with some weather issues lately.
I've heard.
Um, yeah, we've had some big storms come through, especially in Southern California. They've had some flash floods and mudslides, and it's been rough. So
Hmm.
the water's always needed, but overall, I think California is doing good. Actually, yes, was it yesterday? They came out saying that we're under budget as a state in
Mm,
deficit. So that's something that they're going to have to deal with later. But yeah.
right on. So again, for the audience, I've been trying to get Sam on the podcast, and Sam and I, like the schedules were just not syncing up. We were able to sync up today. And again, it's really a truly an honor to have you because you're a trio legend in the trio community.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe sometimes that this is I'm finishing up 32 years working in trio,
Wow.
and I use the term working loosely because to me it's not work. It's a mission. It's a passion. Working with not only youth but also with my coworkers. You
Hmm.
know, going through so many different staff who've come in and learned how trio works, and then move on to other positions as directors or assistants or whatever they pursue. But yeah, 32 years goes by fast. I still remember my first day on the job.
Wow.
Um, and quick funny story. So it was September of 1992, and my dad at the time, he was living in Texas, and he called me and he said, "Are you ready for your first day?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Make sure you wear a nice shirt, nice tie, because you're a professional now." So I
Hmm.
go and I buy a new tie and get all dressed up, white shirt. And the director at the time, her name was Ping Chan, an awesome person. And my first duty was to move boxes from the summer program to the storage unit.
You have to roll up the sleeves a bit.
Yeah. So I like took off the tie and got to work.
I think Trio likes to put us in a kind of a test by fire, just like, hey, go in there and do it. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, exactly. There's never a dull moment in trio, and the days are different every day.
Absolutely. So Sam, at the beginning part of this podcast, we talked about some of your interests. You love fishing. You also watch old TV shows. Talk to us about how you got into fishing and what old TV shows do you like to watch?
And both of those answers, there's one common theme, and that's my dad. My dad
Awesome.
really taught me and my brother how to fish, where to fish. And growing up in the Central Valley in the small town Delano, near Bakersfield, my parents were working in the grapes back in the 60s and 70s,
Mm,
and we would go on weekends to up to the mountains to go fishing or to the lakes, um, and then in growing up, we didn't have many TV stations, right? It was only like seven different channels to choose from,
mm.
and so I grew up watching Andy Griffith's show and
Oh
Brady
yeah.
Bunch and Welcome Back Carter and
Hmm.
all those, and I still enjoy looking at those shows. In fact, my siblings make fun of me because I know all the episodes of all those shows, and I can tell them what it's about after like 5 seconds of the intro.
Oh wow.
So it just calms me, and it really brings me back to growing up in the back in the day, and and I still watch current shows, but not as much or passionate as the old TV shows.
Right on. That's awesome. So it's a common thread between fishing and watching the Andy Griffith Show and all the other old shows. That is amazing, and all that brought on by your dad, which again, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
What is the goal that you have for 2024?
Ooh, um, to finish my COE chair position strong.
Mm-hmm.
There's 10 regions throughout the country that
Mm-hmm.
represent COE and the TRIO programs, including Guam, Palau, Micronesia Islands, and Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to make sure I get to meet people and
Mm-hmm.
understand what their needs are at each region and the struggles that they have with meeting with students and making sure that they're meeting their objectives and getting students to college and finishing college. So I think that's one of my main goals. And of course, um, I couldn't do it without my strong staff because I'm always on the road. I have really good assistant directors who do a great job making sure that we're meeting our objectives and numbers at our school site. So I think that's one of the main goals I have.
That's awesome. What is something new that you learned about yourself either so far this year or last year?
Mm, I think it's really putting myself out there and taking new challenges. Um, and again, even though I've been this in this work of trio for over 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
I it's understanding the new students. It's a new
Understanding.
generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's and I get I get it. I am old. I'm over 50. Um, I don't know the new music. I don't. I like old school hip hop and rap,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know the new artists. So that's one thing I'm trying to really understand and learn.
I mean, that's awesome that you're open to learning what your students are into because they say that even though you say you're old, I say you're 50 years young and that you're still expanding and willing to make those connections because and that's what keeps your mind youthful is that you're willing to continue learning about the younger generation, which is amazing. So you are involved with Trio in variety of capacities. How do you achieve a balance between your advocacy, your work, and time for yourself?
Ooh. That's again, that's a big part of me is balance. I always tell um, students and my staff, there's only 24 hours in a day for everybody, right?
Hmm.
Everybody has 24 hours. It's up to you what you want to do in those 24 hours to keep a balance in your life. Because without, of course, sleep, you can't be alert. So
Hmm.
you got to get some good sleep. Um, and then work is your job, right? You have to
Yeah.
do what you need to do in those 8 hours, and that leaves the other 8 hours to yourself. What are you going to do with those other 8 hours? And it's that balance. And for me, again, like I said, it's having great staff who can make sure that our program's running smoothly, spending time with my family and with my friends. It's you get to a point where you know where your body can do and what your mind can do, and there's a limit, and that limit is up to you to understand. Okay, I need to stop doing this and do that instead to
Hmm.
make sure that everything is equal and balanced. Because if you're off balance, you're going to be affecting not only yourself but others.
Oh, true. Very, very true. Sam, we're going to rewind the clocks back a little bit. We want to get to know you and your childhood growing up. What was your family like, and what was your childhood like?
Oh man, excuse me if I get emotional because I'm an emotional guy.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I'm 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 trio by heart, right? Because trio you do a lot of good work with students, but you know, uh, two great parents. I mean, my mom and dad came from Corpus Christi, Texas, and they came all the way to California for work to follow my mom's parents, and they moved into even a smaller town than Delano. It's called Rich Grove, And so I grew up basically from birth to was it sixth grade. I grew up in the grape fields. Nobody really around. We were in the grower, the grape grower. He had like a little house that my dad we were able to live in. That was part of like his weight, his earnings, his
Hmm.
salary.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember the great boycotts of the early '70s were around our house. Um, and then my siblings, my two older sisters, my brother. Um, I just lost my sister in
I'm
December,
sorry to hear that.
um, to cancer. And she was only 58, and she was a nurse. Um, and we had a great relationship. And I know, death is part of life, but to go at a young age for her, it's been tough.
Hmm.
And it's only been a couple months, but uh, we're moving on as a family. We're helping support each other. And it's been a little bit surreal for me because um, I'm 4 hours away because I live in, here near Davis and Woodland,
Hmm.
and everyone's still back home in Bakersfield.
Hmm.
And she was living in McFarland at the time. And so it's a little surreal sometimes because I didn't really see her much in person. It was always texting or calling. But yeah, I mean, my younger brother, he's a correctional officer back home in Tehachapi. My other sister, she's retired, but she was in HR in the prison system as well.
Hmm.
Um, my dad passed in 2014. Um, he was my best friend. I miss him still. It's been almost 10 years. And then my mom, she's still in Bakersfield, I mean, in Delano, they're living. So, but yeah, a lot of my cousins are in Texas,
Hmm.
some here in California, but yeah, that's me. I was a very shy, quiet, always studying type of kid, growing up in the Central Valley.
Wow. So first of all, Sam, condolences to you and your family. Absolutely
Thank you.
losing a family member is really, really rough. But we appreciate you sharing a little bit of your childhood and your journey so far. What was education something your family emphasized with you?
Oh yeah, definitely. My mom, she was the strong force of my parents. Uh, she was the one you could say with the chancla or the belt that 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 if we ever brought home a C grade, we were in trouble.
Mm.
So uh, not even D's or F's. That was out of the question. If we
Oh,
even
yeah.
brought a C, so I studied my butt off, and in fact, my dad was notorious for us. We couldn't leave the table until we knew the times tables, and
Wow.
we would cry, and uh, but because of that, I in the summers I teach math, and I did that with my daughter uh, when she was a third, fourth, fifth grade. Every time
Mhm.
I took her to school, she had to answer multiplications within 2 seconds, and she would do it. And just that that
Wow.
that emphasis of going to school was always, you know, brought to us. My dad went to high school and he graduated high school, but my mom only went to the third grade. But she's really good at adding real quick as well. So I think that's a testament of her good skills at blackjack. she, she can do it quick. So uh, they've always made sure that we were doing well in school.
How would your family describe you? Sorry, as I caught you in the middle of a drink.
In Yeah, no, in just overall or like in education.
Educationally or even personally, like how would they describe you as a person?
I was always so my family, they all call me Sammy. I'm little Sammy because
Hmm.
I'm SB3 because I'm named after my dad and my grandpa.
Hmm.
And then and my grandma used to call me Tercero. That was my
Tercero.
nickname for her. Uh, but if they would have to describe me, I would be kind of a nerdy math. Uh, 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 how would you say? Like trivial. I throw out trivia, little random trivia facts, and
Mm.
um, but they were always so proud of me of going to college because I'm the only one that really went to a 4 year college and finished and got my master's and um, but yeah, I think that's what they would say.
Can you talk about your early days in education, like elementary and middle school? What was that experience like for you?
Well, growing up in the grape fields there by Delano, I went to Rich Grove Elementary School, and it was mostly migrant farm workers that would go there, and it's a small little town with back then mostly Mexican and a few Filipino uh, families. And I remember in kindergarten, uh, there was a classmate of mine. Her name was Goya, and uh, her parents dropped her off, and she just started bawling, just crying.
Mm.
And I was the one. I went up to her, to hug her and tell her it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And
Mhm.
we're still friends to this day. Um, and so I've always been kind of like that the one that really looking after others and really caring about others. And I also remember I think I was the first one to count to 100 in in
Wow.
in kindergarten. So, but great teachers too. I remember Miss Bacobo was my first grade teacher. Miss Dunleavy, um, Mr. Rand. I mean, just it's amazing when you can remember teachers' names and how much of impact that they had.
Absolutely. Many students talk about like this an aha moment where they realize that, oh, this is important. This is what I'm supposed to be doing while in school. Did that aha moment happen to you very, very early on or kind of later in school? Yeah. When did you have that aha moment for you?
Um, well, do you mean in terms of like just education or like my job or in what time?
In
Because
terms of education. Hmm.
so my senior year in high school, well, let me back up. So my
Yeah.
parents separated a week before my eighth grade graduation,
Mm.
and my mom moved us, me and my brother, to Bakersfield from Delano, and that's about
Hmm.
30 miles away. And I went to we moved to South Bakersfield, and I was supposed to go to South High School. And during the summer, my mom said, "Well, we can't afford this apartment anymore," so she found us a little one-bedroom studio apartment in East Bakersfield. And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh, so am I going to go to East High?" She was like, "Yes." And at that time, East High had a bad reputation,
Oh, really?
and I was like, "No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go." So my my the counselors at the high school were assigned according to your last name.
Hmm.
So my counselor I was assigned to was Dr. Jim Nuanez, and he was the one that really opened my eyes towards education as
Hmm.
well. And I'll never forget. It was junior year, and we were signing up for classes for senior year. And senior year, we like to relax and have a good time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So he's signing me up, and he gave me pre-calculus,
Oh, my.
physics,
Oh,
honors government, honors English.
oh,
I'm like,
jeez.
honors. He goes, no, you're gonna need it for college.
Hmm.
So when you apply for colleges, and he goes, your last class typing. I'm like, no, no, this is 86, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, I don't. He goes, you are going to need it in the future. And he
Hmm.
signed me up for type. He made me sign up. I took typing, and to this day, I thank him for that. And uh, he, it's been a rough year. So he passed away this February.
I'm sorry to hear
Um,
that.
and he was a big part of my education. Um,
Wow.
and that aha moment was, I'll never forget that typing class. And who knew years later we're always on the computer.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
all
Yeah.
and I'm super thankful for that.
That's amazing that your counselor slash advisor had that foresight to say, hey, no, you're gonna need this. That's amazing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So How did you and your family prepare for your transition to high school? I'm kind of curious because there's either I've gotten a lot of ranges from I went to high school underprepared, or you know what, we tried to prepare as much as we can, but we didn't know what to expect. Where did you fall in that range?
From high school, from junior high to high school?
Uh-huh.
Wow. Um, I- so it's in our home, education was always important. Like I said, my mom only went to the third grade, but she's still the smartest person I know
Mm,
because she knew how to make a small little apartment look like a mansion.
mm,
And she really took so much pride in in work ethic on whatever she did.
hmm
And I always looked at that as something to to be. Like if I could be half of what my mom was, I'd be happy
mm,
because she really, really did a lot for herself and her family and her kids. And she's been through a lot throughout her whole life. And, working, I remember she'd get up at 4 a.m. to cook, our get our stuff ready for the day. And she would, cook breakfast and get things cleaned up. And then she'd go out and work in the fields from like
hmm
6 to 11 or 12 because it was too hot, after that. Come home and I'd never forget that smell, from the grape fields of how she was. And she, get cleaned up and then cook dinner and get everything ready for us for bedtime
Wow.
at 9 o'clock. And then wake up and do the same thing over and over every day and never
hmm
complained about anything. She was just always make sure that we were clean, had
hmm
good clothes. My hair, I used to have hair. My hair was combed with that ointment, whatever it was called. The came out of a tube. I can't remember, but
Oh,
it
it's
would make the
I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but anyways, but yeah. So I mean, they've always so when my parents separated and I went, I had to, you know, commute that last week of eighth grade to Delano to
Hmm
graduate. I it just it just it was like it was weird because it was even though my parents didn't go to college,
hmm
for me it was I knew that that was something I needed to do.
hmm
Not wanted to do, but I needed to go to college because I really wanted to make, you know, them proud of what my hard work was like they did. And at
Certainly.
first, it was tough because my reading skills weren't the best. So I relied on my math skills to really put me through.
So did you know you wanted to go to college? It feels like you had like this certainty about you that you knew that you wanted to go to college.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember as a kid, we used to, the big weekends going to Bakersfield. That was a big thing for us because that was 30 miles away. There's traffic, and so we would, go on weekends to the Valley Plaza, which was the mall. And I remember one time we passed by Bakersfield College, and to me, it was like Harvard, like
Mm,
because I
hmm
had no idea what it was. I thought this was this big college. It was hard to get into. Only smart people go in there. Only, you have to pay a lot of money. I had no idea. But then again, it was my high school counselor that got me. It was a program called MESA. It
hmm
was math, engineering, science achievement, helping uh, low income kids get into math fields and science fields. And that program helped me a lot as well to prepare and know and understand what college was about. And again, to me, it was like, wow, all I have to do is take these classes and get good grades, and I can possibly go into college. Um, and that's how I've always been with that.
Wow. What sort of help or mentorship did you receive to bridge yourself over to college?
A big part, again, like I said, was my counselor, Dr. Juan. So here at Davis, well, actually, let me back up as well. So
Go for
there's
it.
a this is a funny or nice little quick story. So I when I transferred from Delano to Bakersfield, again, like I said, my reading skills weren't the best. So I was put into general English. my
Mm.
freshman year. It
Mhm.
wasn't college prep. And so when I applied to Davis, they initially said no because I only had 3 years of English, not the 4 required.
Oh.
And so my counselor calls UC Davis in his office, and I'm with him, and he talks to the outreach person. Her name was Rosa Estremera,
Mhm.
and he's telling her, Sam is a good student, give him a chance, you know. So they were class by class. They were good. He was giving them updates on each class I was taking my senior year and how was I doing. And like a week later, she calls back and they go, we're going to accept him, but it's special admission, um, which meant that I had to go to the summer program step. It was the summer special transitional enrichment program to
Mhm.
help students with that transition from high school to college. And so I had to go to that, and then I had to take a certain number of classes, but I got in.
Mhm.
And again, if it wasn't for him, so I go to step in 1 week. I hate it. I'm like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
It's too far. I
Mm.
can't understand the chemistry because I was going to be an engineer major, a civil
Mhm.
engineer, and I couldn't understand the chemistry. So I wrote Dr. Juan a letter, and that letter I said, sorry, Dr. Juan, to disappoint you. Um, I'm gonna come home. I'm gonna go to BC. I'm gonna, Cal State Bakersfield, wherever. A few days later, I get a letter back from him, basically saying, "Don't give up." His daughter wanted to give up. His son wanted to give up. Give at least a year, and he said he doesn't matter what your major is. And that letter, I still have. I still have that
Mm.
letter from
Wow.
1987 that really, really changed my attitude towards college, and here I am still, 37 years later, because of 5 years of college. And if it wasn't for him, and that's why when he passed in February, a couple of weeks ago, I went back home to his services uh, to see his wife and his kids, and it was a nice service there for him.
Yeah. Well, again, that is amazing. I think that mentors play a crucial role in a student's ability to walk into a college environment and succeed. So that's amazing. Also, all the hard work that you're putting in, and it's amazing to see uh, how you started off and the role you're currently serving. So that is, for me, just being able to hear that, that's like an honor for you to share that story. Did you always know that UC Davis was going to be your school, or I think you said earlier that Bakersfield Community College was also something that you were thinking about?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I only applied to 3 colleges back in senior year. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but he was a very big, important person in my life. Dr. Nuanez, I was in his office in September of '86 when I was a senior, and I'm going through colleges of where to apply. So I applied at San Luis Obispo, UC Santa Barbara, and that was it. And he had a little postcard on his door. He goes, "What about there?" I go, "Where's UC Davis at?" And he goes, "Oh, it's up by Sacramento." I said, "Dr. Juanes, I never been past Fresno, like ever,
Yeah,
ever. I had no idea what's after Fresno because
yeah.
when we were kids, my parents took us to the Fresno Zoo, and that was the reason we went to Fresno."
Hmm.
And he goes, "Well, let's get a rental van, station wagon, and I'll take." It was myself, James Bradford, and Matt Alviar. We were 3 seniors, and
Hmm.
he took us and 3 juniors to go visit the campus. And he took us on his own time. And when I came to campus, instantly I was like, "This is a school. This is what I
Oh,
this is
wow.
this is this is the campus I really want to go to." So I applied, and like I said, in terms of the admissions, uh, I went to San, I went we went I went to go visit Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo through the Mesa program,
Hmm.
and Santa Barbara, it was too close to the beach for me. I didn't like
Too
the
close to the
beach.
beach? I never heard
Yeah.
that. Like, usually students are super excited, or a potential college student would be
Mm-mm.
like, "Oh, it's so close to the beach. It's gonna be exciting." Were you and you were just like, "Nah, that's not gonna
Yeah.
work."
And I don't know if you've ever seen Santa Barbara, but it's basically on a hill, like
Mm,
overlooking the beach. So it's kind of
yeah.
scary.
Oh,
Um, and then the other one, San Luis Obispo, I just it didn't give me
no
any
click.
vibe. It just wasn't for me. But at Davis, it's like, man, and I met one of my mentors, Joaquin Galvan. He was the retention specialist for the Latino students, and
Hmm.
really also helped me and inspire me to go to college there and to finish. But yeah, that's those three colleges. And by the time I was at that age, BC was not even. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to BC. I need to go away. I need to go far away. So yeah.
Gotcha.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. Nosotros Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now, back to the podcast.
So it would be fair to say UC Davis, your dream school. That was the school you wanted to attend.
Yep, yep. Even though it was past Fresno and having no idea where it was, and it's been a true blessing to spend my career here at the campus, and great people that work here, and that's how I met my wife. She works in admissions.
Oh wow.
We met at a staff meeting. We had a big
Uh-huh.
staff meeting,
Uh-huh.
and she's and that this is back in 1999, and back then she looked very young, and she's originally from the Philippines,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and at the time, and I saw her, I'm like, oh, I can't ask a student now. I thought she was a student assistant because she looked so young.
All right. Right.
And later on, I find out that she was a staff, and the rest is history.
That's amazing. Glad that you found an amazing connection like that. So wonderful. Um, can you talk about the moment you graduated from high school? I know I'm gonna jump a little bit backward, but talk about the moment you graduated from high school. What did that mean for you, and what did that mean for your family?
Yeah. Oh man, high school. Yeah, East Bakersville High School. It was. I remember sitting out in the because it was at the football field there in at the high school, the graduation ceremony, and I'll never forget. I was sitting next to Mike Blackwell, and he was next to me because Blackwell and Blanco are next to
Mm,
him alphabetically. So, and then next to him was my other friend James Bradford, and uh, the valedictorian. His name was Mike Williams,
mhm,
and who's now a professor at University of San Diego, and a good friend of mine. But in
mhm,
his speech, valedictorian speech, he mentioned myself, James, and Matt, the three that the counselor took to Davis. We all went to UC Davis, and he mentioned how we were gonna, make that trip all the way to Northern California to go to college, and I remember seeing my parents and how proud they were of me. Sorry.
No, no, you're good. You're good. It's really an outstanding moment for you and your family.
Yeah, yeah, and uh, especially because my parents were separated, but those events brought them together, and
Mm,
and that really made me really see how important it was to them,
hmm
and that and it was just high school, but it was a turning point in my life that I knew that the rest of my life would be different because I was going to go to college far away, and I'm still here, 300 miles away, but it was definitely a calling that I knew that was the right thing to do at the right time.
Absolutely. So you did decide to attend University of California, Davis. What was it about the school that you loved the most?
The people, the staff, like I said, Joaquin Galvan, Francisco Rodriguez, who was a outreach specialist at the time, and Francisco is now the chancellor of the LA Community College District. Like the whole district, it's the largest community college district in the nation, and he's the
Hmm
chancellor now, and still a really good friend of mine. Um, and the professors there at Davis, they really cared about students, the administration. Um, I was part of an organization called Mecha,
hmm
and Mecha was a big part of my college career because there was a lot of other students just like myself that supported each other and make sure that we're doing well academically and socially. We also started an organization called Hermanos Más Igual, which was the Brotherhood of the Common People. We started that back in '89 with my friends, and also the STEP program, that summer program I was telling you about, uh, that that had other students like myself who needed extra help to finish and go to college. And the other day, in fact, last week, I ran into one of my friends from there, Keith Nathaniel, who I met in STEP in 1987. We're still good friends. So it's just been an awesome experience, and great people that really cared about students, and it still is. I mean, I wouldn't be here and continue my work if it wasn't for the for the great people, and even the chancellor. The chancellor here, Gary May, is a good friend of mine. He knows our programs. He always says hi to me and my wife, and a really good person.
Right on. Can you talk about your college experience? What did you enjoy the most, and what was your least favorite?
My favorite was always, like I said, the hermanos. We hung out. We got things done. We did a lot of community service, a lot of scholarships. We also had a lot of fun. College was fun, but it was tough, but it was fun. And it's always, again, the balance, right? That's what I learned from Joaquin Galvan, was you have to have balance in life, and especially in college, knowing when
Hmm
to study, but knowing when to have a good time, because you don't want to
hmm
stress out, or you don't want to flunk out. But that was fun, because back in high school, a movie came out called Revenge of the Nerds, and that was a big part of my thought process of, is that how college is going to be? The fraternities, the
Like
drinking, all
the
that stuff, right?
stereotype of, yeah.
So I remember, going into college, and I'm like, wow, this is nothing like the movie. uh, you know, and I think the most important thing I tell students is as well is finding your college family, because the people that you hang out with are the ones that are going to be with you all the time. So you got to hang out
Mhm.
with smart people who have a good time as well, and that's what we did. Um, the hardest part for me was switching majors, because, like I mentioned earlier, I was an engineering major at first, and the chemistry, I just could not understand chemistry. I still don't understand chemistry. I love math, but the chemistry was the tough part. So, um, trying to find that right major, I think, and a lot of students do that because, especially low income first generation students, they go and they think that, okay, I'm going to become a doctor, so I'm going to take
Mhm.
all these classes, And a lot of those classes, the intros, they weed students out because it's so difficult. And you're competing with other students who come from very affluent schools who had all these AP classes, tutoring, their parents went to college. So when you come to college, you're like, oh my God, I got my first F. I don't belong here. And they leave and don't realize, you can still switch your major, you can repeat a class. Um, and that's where it's important to have, like the trio programs and programs to help students out. So I think that was the toughest part was getting through that.
I like that you said that because I think for a lot of first generation students, when they encounter a setback, a failure, or even a challenge, it's almost like this area where we're at where we're stunned. We don't know what to do. We see the failure as that is, right? Like, oh, well, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this because I couldn't do it. And we're always seeking perfection. I'm gonna go off a little off script. So what is something that you would say to first generation students who find themselves in those challenging spots, who are in the midst of saying, I give up. This is too hard.
To me, it's like let's say you want to bake a cake, right? And this cake has so many different ingredients, right? And you
Hmm.
want it to come out perfect, because you're gonna feed yourself and feed your friends or family. So you need a recipe, right? Well, imagine if that recipe isn't there and you're gonna try your best to do this cake without that recipe. And you try, and maybe you forgot to put sugar in it or
Mm.
whatever. And
Hmm.
that your cake was like, oh, I give up. I'm done. No more cakes for me. And then all of a sudden, in the corner of your eye, you see this little piece of paper, and it's the recipe. But the recipe is cut in half. Like, oh man, all right, I'm gonna try it again. Eventually, you find the whole recipe, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, that to me, that's kind of like getting ready for college. College, there's a recipe, right? There's a way to know what classes to take, how to write your essays, how to prepare studying, all this stuff. And if you have no way of understanding how to do all that, you're going to be lost, right? You're not going to know how to not even get to college or stay in college or study and complete college. Well, I think that's what these programs do, right? Trio and SSS and all these tutoring programs in the college. Those are the
Hmm.
different recipes to help that student out. Whereas, again, like I said, nothing wrong with being rich and knowing how to do that, but they've come with tons of recipes, right?
Hmm.
Because their
Hmm.
parents went to college, their grandparents might have went to college, and the high schools that they went to know how to give them that recipe to be successful. So if you're not successful initially, just keep finding those resources and those recipes to help you get through that college life.
Wow, that's wonderful advice. So you entered UC Davis. I remember you saying that you wanted to be an engineer. How did you end up in economics? Why economics?
So, like I mentioned earlier, my very I was actually accepted under physics into
Oh,
Davis,
yeah, yeah. Okay.
and but that was because of that special admission. There
Hmm.
was no way I would get into the actual engineering school because it just wasn't the right fit at that time.
Hmm.
So my mentality was okay, physics, but I'm going to switch to engineering. So that's why I took the chemistry, the calculus, all those prep classes. And then when I couldn't understand the chemistry, I was like, all right, I'm going to switch to the math major.
Hmm.
So I switched to math major and I took math 108, math, I think it was called math theory or theory and numbers or something like that. And I go into the class and the professor, first thing he does was, we're gonna show how 1 + 1 = 2. And it's like a whole page of notes, right?
Whoa.
Postulates and theorems and if then statements, all that. I'm like, I love math, but I don't love it that much. so so again, Joaquin Galvan, I'm in his office and I'm like just down, like I don't know what to do. I don't know what's major, blah, blah, blah. He goes, okay, well, let's go through the book. And it was, the book of majors, the catalog. And we're going through. He goes, what do you like? I said, well, I love math, but I don't want to study math. He goes, well, what about economics? I said, oh, let's look at that. Looked at the major and took some classes, and I was like, oh, I like this. So that's how that's how I ended up in economics, and a
Wow.
minor. I had a minor in Chicano studies and education
Okay.
because in 1989 as well, the 89, I think 89 or 88, 89, a movie called Stand and Deliver came out. I don't know if
Oh,
you've
that's
ever seen that.
Edward James Olmos. I remember.
Yes. And it came out in theaters. And after I watched it the first time, I was like, oh, I want to teach math. So that's why
Wow.
I
Okay.
went towards that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a math teacher. And
Hmm.
that's how I got into the minor in education.
So you talked a little bit earlier about the involvement that you had in college. So Hermanos and various other organizations. Were there any other activities or clubs that helped you engage with UC Davis?
Yeah, actually, I was also really involved with the the African American community and
Mm,
the like I mentioned earlier with my friend I met the other day, Keith Nathaniel. He was I'm not sure if you're familiar with the fraternities, but he was an Alpha Phi Alpha. It's an African American black fraternity,
mm,
and at that time we had quite a number of them. The big ones, the Kappa Alpha Psi, Omegas, the Q Dogs, and
mm.
it was a big thing on campus. And they would do step
Yeah.
shows out in the quad, where they're dancing and I remember like I was even thinking about joining, but I'm like, I can't join because I'm Mexican.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to him about that. And he was like, no, it doesn't matter as long as you go through the process.
Hmm.
But I saw a couple movies about, the process. I'm like, nah, it's okay. but it was that community that really I embraced too because I felt welcome and I had a good time. I would go to the parties, the fraternity parties and the dances, and uh, it was just again, this is before social media, before internet, before cell phones. So it was just you actually talk to people and you get to know them and
Yeah.
hang out and just have a good time.
Wonderful. So you said that you wanted to be a teacher, that's kind of the goal. Were there any other possible career moves that you were thinking while you were declaring into economics and your education studies and Chicano studies?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the ultimate goal was to be a superintendent, like of a district, and because I wanted to be a teacher, then a principal, and then a superintendent, because I wanted to, make change or be an effective educational leader. So that was the goals at that time until, um, you know, things changed for the better when I was introduced to Trio.
Right on. So you decided on the economics degree. Were there other positions that you were hoping post graduation?
What do you mean? Say that again?
So any careers that you were in the middle of college, you're saying probably do teaching, do some
Mhm.
administration. Did any other opportunities pop up post graduation?
Well, that's how I was actually introduced to Trio.
Oh, right
Um,
on.
so so in college, like I said, I had problems with classes, right? Well, the spring of 1990, yeah, spring 1990, I was getting bad grades again, and I had to go see the dean of the
Oh,
college.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Sorry, I didn't
exactly.
mean to, like, I know that reaction though.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. I got the letter in the mail. It says, "Here's your appointment." I'm like, oh man. And I remember walking into the office, like you get that dun, 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 dun. like this is it. So, and she's going over the classes, and she was like, "You're gonna have to go to summer school, and
Mhm,
you have to at least get a 3.0 in the three classes that you take." I'm
mhm,
like, oh man. And she goes, "If you don't do that, you're gonna get dismissed
mhm,
from the university." So I took two education classes and an econ class. And the education class was Ed 100.
mhm.
And this was the summer of 1990. And part of the class was you had to do field work, observe their
Oh,
teachers, right?
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So there was three choices on the paper. It was Birch Elementary, Holmes Junior High, and UC Davis Upward Bound. And I'm like, what is Upward Bound? I had no idea. And they tell us, the teacher tells me, he goes, well, it's helping kids, low income first generation in high school, and they're taking classes in the summer, and you'd be a TA for their calculus class. I'm like a big shining light just came up on my head. I'm like,
Wow.
what?
Yeah.
I go, yes, sign me up. So first day of class in Wellman Hall, in the first floor of Wellman Hall, I walk in, and Mr. Jim Mullins, he was the math teacher. And again, I'll never forget, I shook his hand, and he goes, welcome to Upward Bound. And there was about 15 students in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And there's three of them on the side. And he goes, see those three? You're going to teach them calculus. I go, Mr. Mullins, I said, I never taught. I've tutored. I never taught. He goes, don't worry. You'll do fine.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm telling you, after the 6 weeks, one kid, his name was M. Nguyen, little kid, came up to me, gives me a hug at the closing ceremonies. He goes, SB3, thank you so much for making math so fun.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, where do I sign up? How do I get a job? So the following summer, I became an RA.
Mm.
And then when I graduated, I became the academic coordinator for 2 years. And then the assistant director at the time, she goes, hey, Sam, I'm going to write this grant called Educational Talent Search.
Mm.
She goes, if you do all the number crunching for me and research, I'll write you in as assistant director.
Oh, wow.
And we got it. And we had that program for 10 years. And then after 10 years as assistant director, she moved up north to run other programs, and I became director.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is history. And
Wow.
that's how I got introduced to Trio.
Sam, that is amazing trio history. So just want to say, damn, that's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your master's degree, because you decided to pivot and do a master's in higher education. Most graduate programs would say you're going from economics to a higher education degree. That's a huge pivot. Why the change?
Yeah. The master's was always something in the back of my mind. And it was my dad. My dad always told me, my dad was so proud of me going to college. I mean, I would buy him those UC Davis dad
Oh
shirts,
yeah, yeah.
and he would wear them all the time. Like
Wow.
especially when I came to visit, and he would always tell his friends, "Yeah, my son's at UC Davis," and it was just really really proud of him. And quick story as well, because I think it's important for this question is, um, when I was graduating from Davis, I had called him because he was in Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas. He moved back to be near his parents because they weren't doing so well. So I called him. I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm graduating in June. This is back in '92. I know it's going to be hard for you to make it because airlines are expensive, and it's a far drive, 2,000 miles. Well, I'm studying for finals, and he knocks. There's a knock on the door, and it's him. It's my dad. I open the door, and I'm like, "Whoa, you made it!"
Mm.
So we'd go through ceremonies, and he was the first person I saw after the graduation. I gave him a big hug, and I said, "Dad, thank you again for driving 2,000 miles."
Mm.
And he looked at me, and I swear he goes, "I would have walked."
Oh wow.
Whew. And
Yeah.
and 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 from that moment, he always told me, also get your master's. Always get your
Mm.
master's. It's
Mm.
important. And at that time, I'm like, oh, I got done with college.
Right.
I'm
Riding a
gonna
high.
work.
You're
And
like, it's
yeah.
it's done. Yeah.
So again, like I said, introduced to Trio, and I became assistant director. And my director at the time, she goes, you should get your master's if you want to become a director, because
Mm.
it's going to be something that's important when you apply for positions like that. even if you don't stay here, Davis. So one day I'm just looking and I go, I don't want to get a master's in economics because it's not something I really want to do for the rest of my life in business. I want to do administration work. So Sac State had a really good education administration program at night, part-time for full-time employees. And so I go, and the staff at that time were amazing. I mean, amazing. There's this professor, I'll never forget him, Leo Mestis, and he was hard-nosed. He was tough, but he really knew how to teach. Jeannie Cowan, she was a professor in research, taught me how to do research. Dr. Shirley Thornton, Dr. T. She was a former principal at Balboa High School in San Francisco. That she was my very first professor, and I'll never forget because you go into a master's and it's mostly all these older people in this program because they're trying to become principals.
Yeah,
because it's an administration master. So she's in there, and she's a very prominent African American woman that used to also be a sergeant. So she was tough but good. So our first assignment was like a small 5-page self-analysis of leadership, whatever. And I worked on that paper for like forever. Like I was so nervous. So I get the paper back, A+, very good job. I'm like, whoa, I can do this. And what I learned was the UCs really prepared me to become a really great writer. And because I started off so weak, that I learned, and also through the grant process of writing grants and helping my supervisor help that as well. So that was the reason I went into that field.
Wow, amazing. Sam, I know you already gave us a synopsis of your work with TRIO, but can you share with the audience the type of work you've done with TRIO?
Well, directly is like I said, I started as a tutor, right, or as a teacher's assistant, and really understood what the concept was of TRIO, was helping students find their motivation, find their way of getting an education. And so I did the academic coordinator position for 2 years with Upper Bound, and then moved over to talent search when Leanne, my supervisor at the time, wrote the grants, and we got those established. But it's funny, every summer I would go back though and teach math for Upper Bound. So I've done every summer, I think, except for one year I didn't do, because we ran a different program called NYSP. It's a National Youth Sports Program that we did. But yeah, so I went into that mode of, okay, talent search, and then Upper Bound the summer. And then back in 2014, the director left the program. The second director left because Ping, who was the first director, she retired, I think in 2012-ish, so in there. And then they hired a new director. It wasn't for him. So when he left, I proposed, I said, you know what? What if I just overtake Upper Bound and talent search? I'll do all of them. And we had to get, program officer approval and all that. And so that's in 2014, I became director of the three. We had 3 talent search programs and 1 Upper Bound that I overlook now. And then in terms of just in non-work related TRIO is when I got involved with the Northern California chapter within Westop, which is one of the regions of COE. And my first position was a treasurer of the chapter, and then I became member of the Westop board, member at large at that time it was called, and then became Westop president in 2018, and then of course most recently as the board chair for the council as a whole. So and also part of the job is, I think, is also mentoring other professionals and other ones who just started, and helping them in with any types of issues or concerns that they have, and with my experience, and me still continuing to learn from others as well, learning how to work with students of this generation, things of that nature.
So you mentioned that you're the board chair for the Council for Opportunity in Education. What is this role specifically, and what do you do?
Yeah, so the Council for Opportunity Education is the organization in Washington, D.C., who really works hard to ensure that TRIO is funded yearly and also provides lots of trainings and workshops to help new professionals. So, like I mentioned earlier, COE is like the overall um, um, organization, and then they have the 10 regions. The West
Mm,
KOT, AEEE, MAYOT, NEOA, all these different regions, and then those regions are broken up into states.
hmm.
Each state is represented. California, we just happen to have chapters because California is such a big
Yeah, it's
state.
a
We
big
have,
state.
yeah, so we have Central Cal, Northern Cal, and Southern Cal. So each of those regions has a president of the region, a president elect, and a past president. So there's three of those. So 10 regions times three, that's 30 people on the board.
Wow.
Then the board then has a chair elect, and a past chair.
Hmm.
So there's 33 of us professionals who work in TRIO and are basically volunteering. It's not a paid job,
Right, right. This is
but you
extra.
also have, yeah, exactly. And you have to get elected into it. It's not something that you just sign up for. You got to be nominated, you got to be voted in, and do the position. So I was uh, I was nominated by my good friend Ray from Florida, and I was you had to do a platform statement in front of the board, and then each of the 10 current regional presidents then vote if there's a competition amongst if there's other people
Hmm.
running. But fortunately for me, I was just the only person running, so I did automatically get the position. But um, and you serve as the chair for that year. You're chair. You run the board meetings. We have one every May, September, and December is the big board meetings, and then as the chair, you attend all 10 regional conferences to
Hmm.
give a keynote speech and updates on the board. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. And right now, I've attended 6 of the 10 so far, so I have 4
Wow.
more to go.
Wow. Well, congratulations, Sam. A very well deserved
Thank
election
you.
because, yeah, it's important to serve in that role, especially when it comes to advocacy for the TRIO programs, because there's a lot of folks that would say, uh, uh, I love TRIO. I know that it's important to advocate, but beyond a show of support, how can folks support TRIO?
Yeah, Trio is the largest bipartisan program supported in DC. And what that means is we have big, huge support from both sides of the table, the
Hmm.
Democrats and the Republicans. And I believe we're at $1.1 billion funded
Wow.
annually
Hmm.
for all the true, for I think it's like 800,000 students that are served nationally. And we only reach like 15 to 20% of the population,
Hmm.
eligible population. So there's a lot of other students that need the help. But
Absolutely.
the and one of our big supporters, champions, is Tom Cole. Tom Cole is a Republican from Oklahoma, and he supports us big time. And we
Awesome.
also have Gwen Moore, who's a TRIO alum, who's a big supporter um, of TRIO programs. So, if people, the easiest and quickest way to support TRIO is to contact your local congressional representative and who serves in the House of Representatives, because we all have them, right? Like here, ours is Mike Thompson here in
Hmm.
Northern California. So every year we have what is called a policy seminar. And the policy seminar is actually coming up in March.
Hmm.
So we're going to go up to DC and meet with our regional reps in our DC offices to make sure that the budget supports TRIO once again next year.
Hmm.
Um, and it makes a huge difference because a lot of people think the president runs the budget. They
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
It's the House and the Senate that really, and what's called appropriations. They appropriate the different monies because back in when was that? 2005, I think. Was it five? I think five. When Bush Jr. was in office, um, he requested in his initial budget. The budget usually comes out in February for the following year, and he had put $0 into Trio, like zero, like he
like
cleaned it
eliminating
out,
it.
eliminated.
Wow.
So, and that's why the policy seminar is in March, because February the budget comes out, March we go and meet. So everybody that year went to DC, and we made Congress, the House, put it back into the budget, and they did. They put it back into the budget, and again, that's part of the easiest way is to contact your local congressional rep and tell them, make sure you support Trio, put it in the budget, and if they already did, and you say thank you for the continued support, and that's the best way.
I think a lot of people, when they hear zero out budget or a budget cut or even level funding, which for those who don't know, level funding meaning just keep the funding from previous years, it carries over, like that. There's no increase, there's no decrease. In terms of student impact and staff impact, what does that mean? Because I think the language gets lost when you say level funding, right? And people just say, oh, in terms of dollars, so you're receiving the same thing from last year. Okay, that sounds fine to me. But what impacts numbers wise does that have on students and staff?
Yeah, it both great question, because yes, it definitely impacts both students and staff. And so say for example, you get funding for your program, and you write a detailed budget out, right? But then the university says we have a mandated increase to increase benefits and salaries by 2%, say, which is good for staff, right? You get a pay increase, but that affects your budget because you're not getting any more money because you're level funded. So you have to cut somewhere else.
Oh.
So you have to cut maybe some services. You have to cut tutoring, or you cut somewhere in the budget because there's no increase in that sense. And you're funded to only serve a certain number of students. So in Upward Bound, we have 108 students that we serve, and you only get so much budget for each of those students. So when we do get an increase, because there's been increases in the past, of course, we get increase in Trio budgets, but that means, are those increases going to go towards the programs or to put more programs in? So that's the balance of it as well, because you want to bring more money into your grant to do more services or make sure that your staff are paid accordingly. But then what if they say, no, well, we're going to put the money into maybe bringing in more programs to help more students? So there's a balance to that.
Absolutely. So I've had guests on the podcast that have stated that Trio programs always need a champion, someone that can continue pushing the programs forward. In what ways have you advocated on either on Capitol Hill or otherwise? And what other ways can folks continue to advocate beyond just contacting their senators and representatives?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me personally, again, it's always doing the policy seminar, going to the offices, and a lot of it is relationship building. It's about who you know. And I remember going a few years ago to at that time Garamendi. He was our local rep before, and I went to his office, and I go into, and it's always those interns, right, that are at the desk, and they're from like Iowa or something, because they're studying pre-law or something. Well, I go in, and the guy at the desk, he has a UC Davis flag behind him. Like, oh, UC Davis. I show him my card. He goes, what? And he was a UC Davis alum. And to this day, we are still friends. Like, he's still, awesome. And he's now the what do they call it? The main person, the staff.
Oh, like
there's a term for it.
Yeah,
chief of staff. I think
chief of staff. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And he's the main one now. So every year I say, hey, Bradley, I'm coming to DC. Oh, Sam, it's great to see you. Or we'll see you again. And I don't even have to ask; they already support Trio, and
That's
I know
amazing.
that they're going to do that. And so again, it's about relationship building, and you know, for local people, you know, like other than calling your congressperson, I think it's really good to visit the programs and
That's a good point.
to get to know the students and the staff. And even if it's just, you know, you contact the director and say, I know that, you know, because sometimes there's issues with background checks and you have to make sure, you know, it's safe to come, but just to get to know the director or the staff and say, hey, I just want to, you know, I'll be with you and I'll visit, especially the summer program. You know, I just want to, you know, see how it is and talk to the students and say what kind of an impact it has on what the programs do for the students. And it's amazing, man. It's, again, I've been doing this for such a long time that I even had I had a family of 11, the Lee family from Sacramento.
Hmm.
All 11 went through Upper Bound,
Wow.
and 10 out of 11 graduated from college,
Wow.
and including 2 from Stanford, 3 from UCLA,
Wow.
three three from Davis, and the only one that didn't go to college or to finish college, she actually went to community college. It just wasn't for her. Her son went through our program, and I had her
Wow.
son. I had her son, and he went to Sac State. Um, so yeah, it's a huge thing, and to get to know the families.
That is amazing, Sam. This work that you've built, the legacy that you're continuing to leave behind with Trio, it's just astounding to watch. So I want to share with you very quickly. My first professional position was a Trio program in a community college ages ago, but I recall in that conversation in one of the conferences that Trio always needs to evolve and adapt. That it always does the most with the least. Um, so, and it continues to do that by serving first generation and low income students. In what ways can Trio staff change their programs to meet these ever evolving needs of first generation and low income students?
Ooh, I really think it depends on the program because each program is ran differently in terms of Upper Bound. You really get to know the students and their families because
Right.
it's very individualized work because it's only 60 students, 100 students versus Talent Search where it's large numbers. Like one of my Talent Search programs, we work with almost 700 kids, and the other 2 are 500 and 500. So it's more group based, and I think in each and then you have SSS, which is student support services, which is at the college level and helping students finish their AA or their bachelor's degrees. And then you have McNair, which helps college students get into postgraduate studies for their PhD
Hmm.
in their field. And then you have EOC, which is Educational Opportunity Centers, which works with adults in the communities,
Hmm.
which has nothing to really to do with the college campus, but you can be housed at the university, but you're working with adults at either adult center. And I just learned this the other day. There's some programs that actually go into prisons and work with
Wow.
prisons
Yeah.
and work with the inmates to make sure they get their GEDs.
Hmm.
So again, it's I think, and the common thing of each of those programs is relationship building. I think
Hmm.
is that doesn't cost anything, right? But you have to pay for things, transportation, salaries, benefits, blah blah. But the key thing is the relationship building that you have and knowing that those students or clients or people are telling others about the program and they want to be involved in it and say, oh, I heard, you know, this counselor from Trio is coming and help with making sure you have the right classes, tutoring help, and it gets word of mouth,
Hmm.
and that how it really becomes real successful in helping others.
That's amazing. So I'm going to ask you to look into the crystal ball with me. We've experienced COVID. We saw how technology really bridged the gap between that shutdown and being able to still serve students. But will a change in technology and the use of newer tools impact TRIO programs like the rise of AI and these new virtual settings? Yeah, looking into your crystal ball, what do you see?
And that's $1 million question right there because in fact, last summer, 2023, we experienced some things with some students that one of our classes, the teacher suspected them of using the what's the thing called now where
Chat
they
GPT.
yes, where they come up with their essay. You can
Oh yeah. Chat GPT, and then there's like several other versions.
yeah, and then we're like, oh my gosh. So we talked to the student, and the student like, yeah, I was, I didn't get anything done. It was hard on me. I did this, blah blah blah. So it's like, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah, yeah,
How do we make the student make sure that they don't do this at their regular schools, right? Versus just upper bound. So I think it's going to have a huge impact, and it's really up to the staff to really teach the students why not to do that or how important that is. Because I think we even recently we had a position open, and it looked like a applicant used that type of service to do their resume.
whoa.
Like, and it was weird because the resume like mimicked the job description. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, they had to put this in the computer. But it was just weird. So looking to the future, because the funny thing, I only have I think 4 more years, and I'm retiring in 4 years.
Mm.
So and as you know, 4 years go by fast because 4 years ago was 2020. We're dealing with the COVID, and it seems just like that, right?
Hmm.
So for our trio students, you know, one of the things we take for granted is at home we have fast internet. You know, a lot of our students don't have that. They don't have that
Mm.
fast internet. Sometimes they have to use the internet through their phone, and
That's
they
right.
make they make they make the ability to try to do, but it's not the same.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we've worked with Comcast. Comcast.
Yeah.
There's a former COE and Trio alum. His name is Fernando Cardenas out of Fresno, and he's been doing a lot of work with Comcast and making sure that they offer affordable internet and laptops to students and their families.
That's awesome.
And all they have to do is programs just contact them to see how they can get that to their students. So that's one thing that we're doing nationally to help students out. But yeah, it's kind of scary, to with the AI and what that's going to entail in the future, and because these students right now are going to be out in the workforce in 10 years, and how is that going to affect the students? Because I always tell my staff, because on my way to work I pass by 3 bus stops, with college students, and I swear almost every single time every student is on their phone, and they're
Mm.
not talking to anyone else. And so
Hmm.
they're just like this the whole
Right.
time.
Right.
I'm like, oh man, it's going to be tough on them when they go out to the real world, and hopefully they realize that, and just different little things like interviews. Hopefully they understand what it means to really be an effective communicator.
Absolutely. That's important. Switching gears a little bit, I think it's fairly easy for individual trio programs to silo themselves off from state and regional organizations. What would you say to a trio program staff who are on the fence about joining a state or regional trio organization?
um I again, I think it's very important to get involved because you grow professionally, and you understand how meetings, the simple things like how to do Robert's Rule of Order, how to run a meeting, how to conduct a meeting, um, how to become a committee member, how to get involved, how to organize yourself, and it'll teach you. I think that's how it taught me to become more organized, and to understand what it means to be an effective uh, indicator of others,
Hmm.
um, and grow professionally, because it's all about who you know and networking and contacts. Um, Again, I've been in this business for such a long time. Like if I have someone say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Long Beach State, Cal State Long Beach." Oh, I know Michelle Scott there. She she'll
Mm.
she'll
Hmm.
She'll help you out. Just tell her SB3 sent you, and so forth. And now with my national role, oh man, I meet people around the whole country, and it's just amazing. After the speech I give, they come up to me, thank you for what you said, blah blah. I said, okay, what's your name? Let's keep in contact. Here's my email. It's you never know who you're gonna meet. In fact, at a national conference last year, we were in Atlanta. Was it Atlanta? I think we were in Atlanta, and the award-winning trio. They have Trio Achievers Awards, like former trio member participants who are doing amazing things. Well, this one, she's like a president of a university and former like math professor.
Oh wow!
And we were at the suite, the presidential suite, because now that I'm in this role, I get to go to the VIP things, right?
Yeah.
So I'm up there, and we're talking, and she was like, "Oh, where are you from?" I go, "Oh, I work at UC Davis." She goes, "Oh, tell Mr. Gary May I said hello." I said, "You know our chancellor?" She goes, "I went to college with him."
Whoa!
So we took a photo, and months later, I see him. I say, "Hey, Mr. Chancellor May," I said, "Look who I met." I showed him. "Oh yeah, I went to college," and we just start to. You just never know, man. You just
Connections. Wow.
It's so important to really get involved and just to put your name out there, and that's not. I'm not saying that to for people to think that oh, you're just trying to show off or something. No, it's about connecting with people, and that's what life is about, right? Getting to know people, understanding people, and getting to know yourself and become an effective change person in whatever you do.
Absolutely. What is a success and a challenge in your role as COE board chair?
Oh, the challenge is balancing everything out. I'm not gonna lie, it takes a lot of time and effort, because you're signing up for this position as again volunteer, not getting paid, but you're putting your commitment towards this position. And whenever COE contacts me and says, "Hey, I need you for this meeting," or "I need you to do this," I have to put everything else aside because this is the role I signed up to do. And of course, the first person I asked when I was thinking of doing this position was my supervisor, and her name is Carmen, and she was super supportive. And she goes, "Oh yes," because she just started with us like 2 years ago. But she, in fact, again, it's all about who you know, right? She used to work with Keith Nathaniel, the guy I mentioned earlier. I knew since '87 in the fraternity. They were good friends and good coworkers, and that's how we connected. Me and Carmen talk about that, and so again, she supported me, and so the challenge has always been making sure that everything is balanced within my job and making sure I'm getting things done with COE, and then the successes of it is again just meeting so many great people that do the same work that we're doing, and I always say this: we are so lucky to have a position like this, that where we're making change in students' lives, whether if you're an advisor or a director, assistant director, admin assistant, whatever position you have, you're still having that impact. You're part of that big puzzle of helping students succeed, and that's part of one of the best things about this position.
So your role as board chair does have a limit to it. You said earlier, I think you said you had like 6 meetings or 4 meetings left.
Well, in terms of your role is to attend each of the conferences. So there's 10 there's 10 conferences because of the 10 regions, and then actual board meetings we have 4 a year.
I see. Do you have a term limit? When does your term limit expire?
So, the position is 3 years, because
Wow.
your chair elect that's when you learn the position, right?
Hmm.
And then you're the actual chair, and then the following year you're past chair. So you're
Wow.
there to support. So it's a 3-year term, and no one does it twice. I mean, because it's just you give other people opportunities.
Absolutely.
In the COE office, they have a headshot of all the chairs since the beginning.
Wow.
So it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So what's the plan after you're done serving as a chair as both well all three when after you're done serving what's next?
Yeah, that's a funny question because so I'm a planner. I'm like I in my mind I plan everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm a very punctual person.
Hmm.
Like if I tell you I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, I'm going to be there. If not, I'll let you know. And that's how I've always been. So when I became um, involved in West Stop, I had always thought I want to do president of West Stop. So I did that, but before that, I said, you know what? I've always wanted to be on the school board. So I ran for school board here in Woodland, and I was on the board from 2012 to 2016. So I did that for the 4-year term. And then right after that, I said, you know what? I want to do West Stop president. So I did president from 16, 17, 18. I'm sorry, 17, 18, 19, because it's a 3-year term as well for the elect, the current, and the past. And then after that was done, my two daughters were older, so I'm like, you know what? I think it's time. I want to do the COE chair. So I said I did that, but I did that after we were done with the grant cycles because you have to write the
Hmm.
grants every 5 years,
Yeah,
and that takes a lot of time and effort. So
it does. It
so
does.
yeah, so I did first it was talent search. Did that 1 year, and then I did upper bound, and then it was done, and then you don't have to write for another 5 years. I said, oh, this is a perfect time to run for COE chair. So
Hmm.
I'm doing that now. So next year is the last year. It'll be the past chair position,
Hmm.
and then right after that is when the grant writing starts again for the
Oh
next
wow.
2 years
Yeah.
after that. And then after that, then it'll be my last year when I retire.
And then retirement. Wow. So
So
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Sam.
now I was gonna say that all the dominoes are falling accordingly.
Congratulations, Sam, on such a wonderful legacy and the amazing things that you've done for Trio. Truly, kudos and congratulations to you and your entire family.
Thank
Um,
you.
what is some advice you would like to share with Trio staff?
Huh. See, one of the things I notice all the time, and has nothing to do with actual Trio, but it's always hard to retain staff because of Trio budgets are not able to pay accordingly
Mm,
sometimes. So it's very
hmm.
hard for staff to make it financially.
Hmm.
And it's tough because I'll have meetings with them. They're like, I applied for this other job because it pays more
Hmm.
and it's still working with students. And I say, I understand that, but you know, my advice is to again network, get to know people of other programs, um, do your do the job effectively to where you work with the students as if you were the student. So
Hmm.
so making sure that they understand the passion that you have in helping them out. Um, we have one of my advisors, her name is Latoya, and she's been with us, what, 13, 14 years and an advisor. And I always tell her, I said, if you ever, want to become an assistant director, director, and she was like, nope, she loves working with the students. She just
Yeah.
loves working with students, and that's awesome. Um, and just again, find your passion on what you're wanting to do, and get involved with your chapters or states, to become that type of leader or organizational skills, um, and lastly is mentor others. You know,
Super
make sure
important.
that others are also, because it's part of that connection, right? You know, you got to help others, and then they'll help the others as well. So I think those are some of the key things.
Absolutely. What advice do you have for trio students, regardless of their journey in college, whether they're an adult thinking about going to college, pre-college, or a trio student currently in college?
Collect business cards.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
And I learned this from a mentor. On the back of the business card, write the date and location you met the person. And that's key, because you never know if you're going to need a letter of rec, or if you're traveling somewhere. And especially now with email, you email them and say, hey, it was great to meet you in February of 2024 at blah, blah, blah. And they're like, wait, what? You remember that? Little things like that is going to be huge for students. Also is, again, I always say this, and I learned this from Joaquin, is finding your balance in everything you do. Find your balance, because if you're off balance, you're gonna struggle. And whether if it's in your classes, in your relationships, in your lives, whatever it may be, find that balance within yourself. And a lot of times people are like, oh, what does that mean? What do you mean by balance? Life is tough, right? There's going to be struggles. You got to find something else that will offset that struggle to make sure that you're level-headed, because stress can be a big part of your pain, and of getting in the way of an obstacle or of a challenge that you're trying to be in your successes. So it's really important to do that.
That's wonderful. Great advice. Sam, we're toward the end of the podcast. I've got to ask you the most difficult question I always ask guests before we wrap up.
Okay.
What is one word you would use to describe yourself?
Ooh, passionate.
Passionate.
I've always had that way of me that, I don't know if you ever watched that movie Dumb and Dumber.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that scene where they're in the bed and they're watching, they're crying in front of a TV.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a TV commercial. And that's how I am. I get very passionate of just small things, and that's how I've always been. I've always had a big heart, an open heart.
Awesome. Well, Sam, it has been an honor to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today. Thank you for discussing your trio background, your current role. I hope to have you on again soon.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. So, Sam, we have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guests sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Sure. Hello, everyone, Trio. This is Sam Blanco III, or SB3, Associate Director of Trio Programs at the University of California, Davis, and COE Board Chair. And as always, Trio works.
That was our guest, Sam Blanco III, who is the board chair for the Council for Opportunity in Education and serves as Associate Director for the Trio Programs at the University of California, Davis. Sam, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your Trio journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, TrioJoblist.com, Jaded Electronics, NOSOTROS Education Center, Cambridge Educational Services, CE Tours, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can sponsor the Let's Talk Trio podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Email us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let's Talk Trio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. This episode was recorded Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. We are in an election year. I strongly urge our listeners to exercise their right to vote. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.